So to do this sidewalk, I like laying down a base coat of kind of a thin gray wash. This conveniently is a cold pressed paper, so it has some texture for the ink to settle into, or the pigment to settle into. But if you don't have as much texture, just make sure you kind of move a little bit around like I am here while it's still quite wet. It's going to model very, very softly. The wetter it is, the more movement you're going to get. This side I didn't like how sticky it was, so I added a little bit more water before I started adding in some more dropped in pigment. And then you're going to go ahead and kind of let this dry. I'm going and pulling out a few highlights so that we're selling the perspective a little bit better, heading into the dark away from us, by pulling them out with my rag there. But you're going to end up kind of letting this dry. It's already touching dry at the top because that was a pretty thin wash. So I'm going to go ahead and lay in a cast shadow coming from the corner of, yeah, that's a building, that random square at the top there. So the corner of the building is doing a little cast shadow on the sidewalk here, so I've laid that in, and then I'm going to start very softly just laying in a few of our shadow points across the front here. I don't mind so much the little areas of pooling or the broken edges. You'll see later we'll kind of use those to make some of our cracks in the sidewalk that might make it look a little bit more realistic. If it's really freshly poured, it would be smoother. But if it's been there a while, you might have some faint cracks and things like that. So another little modeling approach on top of this. So we get a couple different colors. That one has a little greenish cast to it. And it got too much water at the edge of my cast shadow there, so it started to bloom, so there wasn't a nice firm line, so I'm putting it back in. Once I get just this little front edge, I'm going to try to touch it up, but it's really too wet to work with, so we're going to let it dry and come on back. So the piece is dry now. I like to take, you will love this, Devin, a very tiny brush and do some shadows. I'm using like a deep navy here with a bit of gray in it. When pulling the shadows that are going away from you, I start with a wider shadow in the crack and trail out to a very, very tiny thin one just to help increase the shadow lines have some perspective to them. And as you know, I like to use interrupted lines and kind of stutter step lines to help sell it. The like organic quality, that they're not perfectly straight. So here's where I take a pencil, and anywhere you have some of those little edges that are sort of from the bloom, I use that to then create the little crack areas by kind of very softly outlining them, especially the further away you get. Keep your pencil lines even softer. If they're more towards the front, you can have a little bit of a harder touch with it. This would work better if I'd let it dry first, but I didn't, so I'm still gonna go ahead and give it a whirl and try to use my white color pencil just to help give a very slight highlight along the top edges of things that are coming straight at me. So that's that, you know, the front edge of the sidewalk as it curves down into the dark shadow, and at the tops of these little horizontal cracks to show how it wraps around it, goes into the crack, comes towards us. So this is what that looks like dry, and I hope that helps.